real version of what happened, you know?
It was October, whatever, the first time, 2013 or something, that you found him. You remember that very first time.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe not your first thought, but what was the general thing? 'Cause my first thought was something to the effect of, you stupid fucking idiot. But like...
My first thought was just, I thought I could yell him awake. I didn't know. I wasn't educated like I have been.
You had to know he was dying, though.
Well,
you know,
no, not necessarily.
You kind of were shouting.
Yeah, because he had that death gurgle, which I didn't know was a death gurgle. I thought it was a snore.
Well, at what point did you accept that he was dying?
When I saw foam coming out of his mouth.
Okay. And then
the paramedics arrived.
This has happened so many times.
But I'm only going to talk about the last two where I used the Narcan.
I want you to have the comparison first, like, oh, fuck.
I feel like I've been in these trenches for so long that I've almost blacked out some of those feelings. It's almost like going through trauma as a child that just to keep going on, I've had to kind of buffer.
Well, before you had the stuff that we have in the house now, how does it make you feel? Is it like a safety net to you? Just having it in the cabinet?
A little bit, not a lot, because only if I hear him overdose is it and if it's not too late, is it a safety net? So, but it's a great thing to have.
Take us back to that first time.
The very first time?
Yeah.
I think my daughter texted me, is someone snoring? She had heard him snoring in the hallway. And I guess she had thought maybe it was her father or something snoring too loud.
No, I thought he was just doing something stupid. I went to sick him on you, you know.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted him to get in trouble with it. It's like, I can't tell if it's just like, I love the aggression we put towards it, or like it's this childhood thing where it's just like, yeah, I really want to get my older brother in trouble or something. But it's like Clay's doing some whatever in the kitchen. Go check him out. And you're like, tra-la-la-la-la down the hallway. Then you're like, Clay, Clay, Clay. And I hear you shout, honey, for Dad. Dad freaking sprints naked to the room and do it. But then you found him. Then I got up.
And we're shouting for him and trying to get him on his, or trying to wake him up because it seems like he's breathing because he's snoring. And we didn't even have the sense to call 911. You did. Because we just think he's passed out. Like, we had no idea that was, you know, barely even noticed the lips starting to turn blue and stuff. And then the foaming of the mouth, and then the paramedics arrived.
So this was prior to you having naloxone also for yourself?
Right. This was way before it was available in the state, or you could even get it from like harm reduction in Willimantic black market or something. Believe me, I've done a lot of research and tried. Been to New Haven. Yeah.
So, flash forward, when did you first receive the nasal?
I received it
Easter at 5 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah. I received the injectable from a place in New Haven, but it had expired, and I didn't want to have to drive there in the traffic. So I found out that you had offered Narcan. So I got the nasal from you, and then I used it on Easter morning.
What happened?
5 o'clock in the morning, I heard a thud. My son had hit a small bookcase in his room, and he was having seizures. So I immediately knew he was in an overdose. So I went to the kitchen cabinet where I keep the Narcan and got it. And of course, there's not a lot of light, and at 5 in the morning I couldn't see very well. So trying to insert the things in and seeing if the spray went in his nose, I couldn't tell, and I had forgotten that the Narcan, it can take a few minutes before it takes effect. So I'm trying the other canister, and my husband's like, is it working? Is it working? And, you know, we're kind of freaking out in the moment. And I'm like, I don't know. And in the meantime, we had called 911, so they were on their way. And then, you know, a couple minutes later, he did come to, but I was freaking out because I couldn't tell if it had worked. And
When he came to, what was this?
when he came to, he was a little disoriented, and then he realized, and then I told him, you OD'd, we Narcaned you, we saved you, and I said, the paramedics are on their way, we have to bring you to the hospital in case you overdose again. He immediately tried to clean the scene, like probably a lot of addicts try to do, and we're like, that doesn't matter. And then he's just in hyperactive mode, you know, trying to get his stuff together, you know, not necessarily his drug stuff, but just, you know, what his stuff around his bed and his cigarettes, and, you know, and we were worried about him taking off. I'm not sure if he did take off.
Yeah.
Or tried to.
He ran into like a bush.
Oh, he ran into a bush.
Dad's barrel body caught him before 2 officers could.
Yeah. And we tried to tell him, and he was afraid he was going to get arrested. So even though the officers said he wouldn't, and we told him he wouldn't, there was nothing that we could tell him to convince him otherwise. And I guess we had to tackle him, and they almost had to handcuff him to get him in.
They did.
They did have to handcuff him and get him into the ER. And then
For about 4 hours. And here we are 2 days later, or 4 days later.
no, then he came home, and almost 10 days later, on April 8th, our wedding anniversary, he's taking a bath in the afternoon after we had come home from work, and we were going to go out to dinner. And all of a sudden I hear shampoo bottles fall in the bathroom. And I know he's used in there before. I always get nervous when he takes a bath. I know a lot of drug users will go in the bathtub to get a good bang. So luckily he didn't lock the door. I went in there, and he's having seizures again. So I called my husband, and I say, pull him out. And I go and get the Narcan that you had given me, which is the talking Narcan. And you had just showed me how to use it, so I knew how to use it, but I still went and followed the directions step by step as it talked me through it. Take off the red cap, press it on the outer thigh, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And almost as soon as I gave it to him, he came to, which was good. And I could see, you know, there were 2 insertion marks on his thigh. And then again, once he realized what had happened, he got upset and tried to grab all his gear and hide it and run around. And he thought we had called the cops on him, but we had told him, we still have 1 dose of Narcan, we're going to drive you to the ER. And he was still a little paranoid. And that's when we brought him to the ER. And then we worked with his counselor and an interventionist and got him into long-term treatment. So, and what was good about that is there's a saying in the families with addicts community that as long as they're living, there's still hope. And because of Narcan, there's hope for him to be in recovery. And while he's been in rehab in Florida, his girlfriend gave birth to his first daughter, our first grandchild, and now he's thrilled about that. When he was using, he wasn't very thrilled about it. So he seems to be taking the steps in the right direction, and hopefully he'll be there longer and do the things he needs to do.
All right. Thank you.
You're welcome.